A star who once earned tens of millions of dollars a year was forced to sell almost everything he owned to pay off his debts. A teen idol whose face once covered magazine covers spent his final years without stable housing, while the actress, famous for playing Lois Lane, once wandered around in such a state of panic that no one recognized her. Behind Hollywood's red carpets and bright lights were people who once had money, mansions, and millions of fans, only to be dragged to rock bottom by declining careers, illness, broken relationships, and dangerous habits. Some had to sleep on the streets, live in their cars, or rely on the help of friends, showing that the distance between fame and having nowhere to return to can sometimes be much shorter than we imagine. What haunts me most is not how much money they lost. It is the fact that many of them still had to smile in public when their private lives had completely fallen apart. So who escaped the darkness, and who was swallowed by it forever? The first story begins with the woman who once stood beside Superman, but in the end, no superhero appeared to save her.
Behind the glitter, the scars remain. Welcome to Hollywood Stars and Scars.
Number 24, Margot Kidder. On screen, Margot Kidder was the sharp, stubborn, and energetic Lois Lane. Starring alongside Christopher Reeve in the Superman film series, she turned the female reporter into a cultural icon, an intelligent woman who was not afraid to walk into danger on her own. Born on October 17, 1948, in Yellowknife, Canada, Margot appeared in more than 100 film and television projects. Black Christmas and the Amityville Horror showed that she was remembered for more than Superman and had built a notable acting career. In 1996, Margot experienced a serious crisis related to bipolar disorder. For a brief period, she became disoriented, had no stable place to live, and had to depend on friends, strangers, and support facilities to get through the most difficult period of her life. The sight of Metropolis's strong female reporter searching for somewhere to sleep at night was heartbreaking to many people. After the crisis, Margot returned to work, although her roles were no longer as glamorous. She died on May 13, 2018, at the age of 69, leaving behind a brilliant legacy marked by many painful losses. While Margot showed how mental illness could pull a star away from reality, the next person proved that a masculine and attractive appearance could not protect someone from years of self-destructive behavior. Number 23, Michael Vincent. In the early 1970s, Michael Vincent had the ideal appearance of a Hollywood leading man. His angular face, blonde hair, and rebellious attitude made him a symbol of masculinity. He worked alongside John Wayne and Burt Reynolds and attracted attention with his role in Hooper. Behind that strong exterior was a life that gradually spiraled out of control. Vincent struggled with substance abuse, legal trouble, and numerous personal problems. As his career declined, acting offers became increasingly rare. By the early 2000s, his health and finances were in serious trouble. Vincent went through a period without stable housing in California, while years of substance abuse had taken a heavy toll. A later infection-related complication resulted in the amputation of part of his leg. That image was completely different from the young man once seen as Hollywood's wild heart. Michael Vincent died of cardiac arrest on February 10, 2019, at the age of 74 in a North Carolina hospital. But the collapse of an adult was still not as painful as watching a child grow up in front of the cameras, only to discover that the world no longer had a place for her once the show ended. Number 22, Erin Moran. In Happy Days, Erin Moran played Joni Cunningham, the lovable younger sister adored by American audiences. The romance between Joni and Chachi made her a familiar face in teen magazines, but television fame could not protect her from the difficulties of real life. After the show ended, acting opportunities became increasingly scarce, and her income grew unstable. Hollywood continued searching for younger faces, while the breakdown of her marriage and alcohol-related problems gradually caused Erin's life to spiral out of control. In 2010, she had to leave her home in California, lived in unstable circumstances, and depended on relatives. The media repeatedly exploited Erin's decline, turning her personal struggles into entertainment. On April 22, 2017, Erin died at the age of 56 from complications of stage 4 squamous cell carcinoma in her throat. To many viewers, she will always remain the young Joni from the brightest years of American television. However, the next person did not just lose his career. he also had to live with the consequences of a decision he made when he was young that permanently changed both his life and the life of a friend. Number 21. Leif Garrett. Leif Garrett was once the idol of millions of teenage girls with his blonde hair, romantic appearance, and the song "I Was Made for Dancing." By the end of the 1970s, he had become one of the most prominent teen stars and appeared to have a promising future ahead of him. But fame at such an early age brought dangerous habits with it. Substance abuse gradually overshadowed his career, leading to legal trouble, financial difficulties, and periods without stable housing. Despite numerous attempts to make a comeback, addiction repeatedly pulled him back to where he had started. Leif also carried the trauma of a car accident that happened while he was driving under the influence, leaving the friend who was with him seriously injured. The consequences became a burden that neither money nor apologies could erase. In later years, Leif spoke publicly about his struggles and tried to rebuild his life. Audiences looked at him with nostalgia and regret because the golden boy of pop music now existed mainly in old photographs. While teen fame led Leif toward dangerous choices, Dana Plato entered an even lonelier nightmare when Hollywood decided she no longer had any value. Number 20. Dana Plato. Dana Plato died when she was only 34 years old, but her tragedy had begun long before, when audiences stopped seeing her as Kimberly Drummond from Different Strokes. On screen, Kimberly was a charming girl living in a family where every problem could be resolved quickly. In real life, Dana struggled to make the transition from child star to adult actress. Opportunities became scarce, her finances were unstable, and her dependence on drugs led to legal trouble and periods without stable housing. The bitter irony was that she had appeared in a famous family television show, but lacked a strong enough support network when her own life collapsed. Dana tried to seek treatment and return to her career, but the same difficulties continued to repeat themselves. On May 8, 1999, Dana died after overdosing on prescription medication. Her death was later determined to be connected to an act of ending her own life, bringing the sad story of a once-beloved star to a close. And then we come to a country singer who sang about love while her own romantic life was increasingly turning into a battlefield. Number 19. Mindy McCready. In the mid-1990s, Mindy McCready emerged in country music with 10,000 Angels and Guys Do It All the Time. From a young woman in Florida, she quickly became a promising star because of her powerful voice, attractive appearance, and confident presence. But behind the love songs was a life filled with instability. Mindy struggled with addiction, arrests, probation violations, broken relationships, and child custody disputes. Every time she attempted a comeback, another crisis pushed her backward. She entered rehabilitation programs several times and returned to the public eye, giving fans hope that things would improve. However, Mindy's recovery journey was repeatedly interrupted by old difficulties. On February 17, 2013, Mindy died at the age of 37. Her story shows that mental health problems and addiction require long-term support, especially for people under pressure from fame, family, and their personal lives. But the next case unfolded in the middle of some of the wealthiest streets in Los Angeles, where a former model had to search through trash for food, only a few miles from the world of Hollywood. Number 18. Loni Willison. Images of Loni Willison living on the streets of Los Angeles once shocked many people. She had previously worked as a model, been involved in the entertainment industry, and was known through her marriage to an actor who had appeared in Baywatch. With her blonde hair, athletic figure, and striking appearance, Loni once represented the glamorous image of Southern California. Following a turbulent marriage and a widely discussed separation, Loni's life quickly became unstable. Problems involving her physical health, mental well-being, and ability to work gradually pulled her away from her former life. Around 2015, she began living on the streets of Los Angeles and frequently rejected or avoided people who tried to approach her with offers of help. In a city filled with luxury stores, expensive cars, and enormous billboards, Loni struggled to find food and basic necessities. Several organizations offered treatment and housing assistance, but she has still been unable to escape her difficult circumstances. Loni's story shows that homelessness is often connected to health problems, trauma, and a loss of trust, rather than simply a lack of money. From a model on the streets, we turn to a music idol who once made stadiums shake, but was ultimately crushed by his own perfect public image. Number 17, David Cassidy. David Cassidy was once the idol of millions of American teenage girls when he played Keith Partridge in The Partridge Family. With his flowing hair, charming smile, and the song I Think I Love You, he quickly became a symbol of youth. David's image appeared across magazine covers and countless products made for fans. But behind the spotlight, David increasingly felt trapped in the image of the perfect young man created by the studio and the public. His exhausting performance schedule, constant scrutiny, and pressure to maintain his fame led him toward alcohol and drugs. Over time, his relationships broke down, his career declined, and his money gradually disappeared. During the final years of his life, David declared bankruptcy, lost his home, and had to live in unstable circumstances. He once spoke about the shame of being someone admired by millions of people who could no longer provide a secure life for himself. David died on November 21, 2017, leaving behind songs connected to the youth of an entire generation and a sad story behind his fame. The next person was not a blonde teen idol. He was a rapper who wore the most famous baggy pants in the world and spent money so quickly that even tens of millions of dollars could not save him. Number 16, MC Hammer. In 1990, MC Hammer virtually dominated the music industry with You Can't Touch This. His signature dance moves and baggy pants turned him into a cultural icon. At his peak, Hammer reportedly earned around $33 million a year and built an image resembling a true entertainment empire. However, the money disappeared quickly because of his enormous expenses. He purchased a large house, luxury cars, a private jet, and maintained an entourage of more than 200 people. When his income declined, taxes, lawsuits, and debts hit him all at once. In 1996, Hammer filed for bankruptcy, with reported debts of more than $14 million, and his mansion and many personal possessions had to be sold to meet his financial obligations. After the collapse, Hammer continued producing music and became involved in technology businesses, media projects, and community activities. He never returned to his former peak, but he managed to build a more stable life. Hammer's story shows that a high income does not guarantee lasting wealth when spending and financial responsibilities are not properly controlled. While Hammer lost an empire because he lived too extravagantly, Willie Aames lost his direction when audiences no longer saw him as television's lovable young boy. Number 15, Willie Aames. Willie Aames once represented the image of wholesome American youth through 8 is Enough and several roles he played as a teenager. With his bright face and friendly personality, he quickly became an idol. But as he grew older, Willie struggled to escape his former image, and his career gradually slowed down. The disappointments of the 1980s led him toward alcohol and drugs. Poor decisions resulted in arrests, bankruptcy, and the loss of his home. By 2007, Willie had experienced a period without stable housing in Vancouver, forcing him to confront the reality that his former fame could no longer help him overcome his difficulties. The turning point came when Willie admitted that he needed help, entered recovery programs, and gradually rebuilt his life. He later volunteered to help people in similar circumstances, became a speaker, and continued appearing in several entertainment projects. Willie's journey shows that recovery can still begin even when someone believes they have lost everything. That comeback brings us to Natasha Lyonne, who once nearly disappeared into New York before being reborn as one of the most distinctive voices in modern television. Number 14, Natasha Lyonne. Before becoming famous for Russian Doll and Orange is the New Black, Natasha Lyonne was a child actress who grew up in a deeply unstable family. She appeared on screen at an early age and quickly attracted attention because of her distinctive, raspy voice, intelligent acting style, and appearance that differed from the familiar Hollywood standard. Natasha's teenage years were marked by family conflict, expulsion from school, and increasingly serious substance abuse. Arrests, Periods of treatment and health problems nearly caused her career to disappear. Around 2005, Natasha no longer had stable housing and had to rely on support facilities to survive the most difficult period of her life. Natasha's comeback was slow but steady. She began with small roles, maintained her sobriety, and gradually regained the industry's trust. Orange is the New Black opened new opportunities, while Russian Doll allowed her to establish her talents in acting, writing, and directing. But immediately after A Story of Rebirth comes one of the most horrifying family tragedies in American music history. Number 13. Marvin Gaye. On April 1st, 1984, just one day before his 45th birthday, Marvin Gaye was at his parents' home in Los Angeles. Following a heated argument with his father, gunshots rang out, and the artist who had created What's Going On and Sexual Healing was struck down by the very man who had raised him. That shocking ending nearly overshadowed an extraordinary career and many years of turmoil. Marvin possessed a smooth voice, capable of turning subjects such as war, injustice, love, and loneliness into deeply emotional music. He was one of the greatest icons of Motown's golden era. But behind the spotlight was a troubled life involving substance abuse, finances, taxes, and complicated family relationships. The most heartbreaking part was that Marvin always wanted his father's approval, even though their relationship contained so much pain. The house that should have been a final place of peace instead became the place where his life ended. Marvin's music continues to live on, but after that tragedy, his voice seems to carry an even deeper sadness. From a Motown legend, the story moves to a television actress who once made audiences laugh, while her life away from the set increasingly spiraled out of control. Number 12. Lisa Robin Kelly. Lisa Robin Kelly was remembered by audiences for playing Lori Foreman in That 70s Show. With her attractive appearance, mischievous personality, and unpredictable acting style, she quickly became one of the most memorable faces on the popular sitcom. However, Lisa suddenly left the show when her personal life began falling into crisis. Substance-related problems led to multiple arrests and personal conflicts, causing her public image to deteriorate. Producers became cautious about working with her, and acting opportunities gradually disappeared. Although she tried several times to seek treatment and return to the screen, Lisa continued to be mentioned in the media, mainly because of scandals. On August 15, 2013, she died at a treatment facility at the age of 43 from multiple drug intoxication, leaving behind sadness among those who had loved the sharp-witted Lori Foreman on television. The next person did not lose his career because of addiction. He lost years of freedom because he believed fame could place him beyond the obligations that every citizen is required to follow. Number 11. Wesley Snipes. During the 1990s, Wesley Snipes was one of Hollywood's most prominent action stars. From New Jack City and White Men Can't Jump to his martial arts roles, he impressed audiences with his strong, humorous, and confident style. Snipes' career was shaken by tax problems. In 2008, he was convicted of failing to file federal tax returns and received a 3-year prison sentence, seriously damaging the image of a top Hollywood star. After his release in 2013, Snipes returned to acting, but no longer held the same position he once had. His years away and financial scandal became an inseparable part of his name. Although there is no confirmation that he was ever homeless, Wesley's story still represents a significant fall from the top. He lost his freedom, career opportunities, and part of his reputation, but continued working toward a return to Hollywood. While Wesley had to face the law, Randy Quaid claims that Hollywood itself was pursuing him through a conspiracy that sounded more like a screenplay than any movie. Number 10. Randy Quaid. Randy Quaid was once one of Hollywood's most prominent supporting actors. He gained critical recognition through The Last Detail and became unforgettable as Cousin Eddie in the National Lampoon's Vacation film series. Randy's life changed when he and his wife, Evie Quaid, became repeatedly involved in disputes concerning hotels' property and illegal occupancy. The couple also claimed they were being pursued by a secret group they called the Hollywood Star Whackers. They later left the United States for Canada in search of protection while their legal problems continued. Randy's career nearly came to a standstill, and the image of a respected actor was gradually replaced by controversial statements. From an award-nominated star, Randy became a man constantly living with suspicion and anxiety. In the end, fame and money could not help him regain a sense of safety. And while Randy was haunted by a conspiracy within Hollywood, John Drew Barrymore carried the curse of the most famous family in American theater. Number 9. John Drew Barrymore. John Drew Barrymore was born in 1932 into one of Hollywood's most famous families. As the son of the legendary John Barrymore and the father of Drew Barrymore, he inherited both fame and the burden of living beneath his family's enormous shadow. He had an attractive appearance and appeared in While the City Sleeps and several other films. However, constant comparisons with his father made it difficult for John to establish his own position, while substance abuse arrests and an unstable personal life gradually weakened his career. John became increasingly distant from Hollywood and his family. For a time, he lived a wandering life and nearly disappeared from public view. He died on November 29, 2004, at the age of 72. Despite their deeply troubled relationship, Drew Barrymore continued supporting her father during the final years of his life. The next person was also a child star, but instead of carrying a famous Hollywood family name, he carried memories of a celebrated childhood and a violent father. Number 8. Danny Bonaduce. Danny Bonaduce became famous as a child through his role as Danny Partridge in The Partridge Family. Although he was loved by millions of American viewers, behind the stage lights, he grew up in a tense household and later said that he had been abused by his father. When the show ended, Danny gradually lost his direction, his work, and even his sense of self-worth. Substance abuse arrests and unstable relationships quickly pushed his life downhill. At one point, he went bankrupt and had to live in his car while still pretending that everything was normal. After years of struggle, Danny gradually rebuilt his career in radio. His humor, honesty, and ability to turn his failures into truthful stories helped him find his place again and prevented his past from becoming the final chapter of his life. However, Amanda Peterson did not have the opportunity to make a similar comeback. She left Hollywood quietly and only returned to the headlines when it was already too late. Number 7. Amanda Peterson. In 1987, Amanda Peterson became an icon of the American high school girl through her role as Cindy Mancini in Can't Buy Me Love. Before she was even 20 years old, she already possessed the beauty, confidence, and appeal of a highly promising star. However, the projects that followed did not achieve the same success. Amanda gradually left Hollywood, returned to Colorado, and lived privately while dealing with mental health problems, substance abuse, financial difficulties, and several legal issues. On July 3, 2015, Amanda died at home at the age of 43 from an accidental overdose. The news left many viewers with a sense of loss, because in their memories, she remained the young and radiant Cindy Mancini on screen. While Amanda disappeared from the screen, Haim tried to make several comebacks. But every time hope appeared, his past pulled him even deeper. Number 6. Haim. Haim was one of the most prominent teen idols of the 1980s because of Lucas, The Lost Boys, and License to Drive. Alongside Corey Feldman, he formed the duo known as the Two Coreys, becoming a familiar symbol to an entire generation of young viewers. However, early fame placed Corey in a deeply unstable environment. He began depending on drugs at a very young age, while trauma within the entertainment industry and the rejection of movie studios made the situation increasingly serious. Corey later faced financial difficulties, went through a period without stable housing, and had to depend on his mother. Despite repeated treatment appearances on reality television and attempts to return, his recovery often unfolded in front of the cameras. On March 10, 2010, Corey died at the age of 38 from pneumonia while in poor health, leaving behind regret over a talent who never had the chance to grow into adulthood in peace. From a lost teen idol, the story moves to a comedian who once lived in poverty before making the entire world laugh, only to later question whether fame could truly bring happiness. Number 5. Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey became one of the biggest comedy stars of the 1990s through Ace Ventura, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber. Few people knew that before he became famous, his family experienced financial hardship and spent a period living in a van. Jim began working at an early age to help support his family and carried the fear of losing everything, even after achieving enormous wealth. Success and money could not erase his periods of depression, feelings of emptiness, and emotional pain, which he openly discussed. Following the death of his former girlfriend, Jim became more private, spending time painting, creating, and reflecting on the real identity behind fame. He did not lose all his money or become homeless, but his story revealed a different kind of loss. Someone can possess everything and still feel that they do not truly belong anywhere. Jim's emptiness was emotional. For Brett Butler, the fall was visible in Bill's illness, and the risk of losing her home after the show bearing her name was canceled. Number 4. Brett Butler. In Grace Under Fire, Brett Butler played Grace Kelly, a sharp-witted single mother trying to rebuild her life. The show became a major success beginning in 1993, earning her critical praise and establishing her as a prominent comedy figure on American television. However, problems involving substance abuse and unpredictable behavior made the set increasingly tense. Production was interrupted several times, professional relationships broke down, and the show was canceled in 1998, causing Brett to quickly lose both her career and her reputation. Her finances gradually ran out afterward. Brett left Los Angeles and at one point had to depend on a shelter and the help of others. She even faced the risk of losing her home, despite returning for several small roles. The bitter irony was that her television show had told the story of a woman overcoming addiction and poverty, while in real life, Brett had to fight those same problems without a complete happy ending. But while Brett lost her money, as an adult, Gary Coleman claimed that his fortune had been controlled and depleted from the time he was still a child. Number 3. Gary Coleman. With just the line, "What you talking about, Willis?" Gary Coleman became one of the most famous child stars in American television history. In different strokes, his small stature, intelligence, and natural comedic ability made audiences love him and allowed him to earn a large income from a very young age. However, Gary had a congenital kidney condition and required treatment for many years. When the show ended, the appearance that had once made him appealing made it difficult for him to find adult roles. He also discovered that most of the money he had earned during childhood had disappeared, leading to a lawsuit against his parents and former manager, as well as years of financial difficulty. Gary later took on various jobs, appeared on reality television, and eventually filed for bankruptcy. He died on May 28, 2010, at the age of 42, following an injury that caused bleeding in his brain. Audiences still remember the laughter he brought them, but behind it was the story of a child star who earned a fortune without ever having real control over it. The next case took place in the age of social media, where every one of Aaron Carter's crises was broadcast live in front of millions of people. Number 2. Aaron Carter. Aaron Carter became a star at a very young age through Aaron's Party and I Want Candy, quickly becoming known as one of the most prominent teen idols of the late 1990s. However, behind his cheerful stage image were prolonged family conflicts and financial disputes. As an adult, Aaron faced bankruptcy, legal trouble, mental health problems, and substance dependence. During the final years of his life, he shared almost every personal crisis on social media, from his treatment efforts and broken relationships to his attempts to return to music. On November 5, 2022, Aaron died at home at the age of 34. The official report determined that the cause was accidental drowning related to difluoroethane and alprazolam. His story shows the danger of personal crises being turned into content for the public to follow, while genuine help remains far too limited. And in the final position is the man who once played Gary Coleman's older brother. He went through addiction prison and the near loss of everything, but his story did not end with an obituary. Number 1. Todd Bridges. Todd Bridges became famous for playing Willis Jackson Arnold's calm older brother in Different Strokes. On screen, he was part of a loving television family, but behind the spotlight were difficult experiences that the public knew almost nothing about at the time. After the show ended, Todd developed a dependence on drugs, leading to multiple arrests, conflicts, and time in prison. He nearly lost all his money, his career, and his freedom before deciding to enter recovery, accept responsibility, and rebuild his life from the beginning. Todd later maintained his recovery continued acting and actively supported mental health and addiction recovery programs. While Dana Plato and Gary Coleman both died at young ages, Todd is still here to tell his story, showing that the past does not necessarily have to determine the rest of someone's life. The first lesson is very clear. Money must be managed even when the income seems as though it will never end. Hammer, Gary Coleman, and many others show how quickly a fortune can disappear when control, tax obligations, and spending are not carefully considered. The second lesson is even more important. Mental health problems do not distinguish between famous people and ordinary people. Someone may be appearing on television, smiling in photographs, or saying that they are fine, while silently falling into crisis. When someone begins behaving unusually, isolates themselves, or loses the ability to care for themselves, what they need is not ridicule. They need professional support, patience, and a community that does not walk away when things become difficult. So which story made you think the most? Share the name of the person you remember most in the comments. And if you enjoy stories that explore the dark side behind the glamour of Hollywood, please like and subscribe to Hollywood Stars and Scars. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. Appreciate the people who are beside you. Do not be afraid to seek help when life becomes too overwhelming. And remember that a person's value has never been determined by how much money they own or how many people recognize their face. I will see you again in the next story, where we will continue looking beyond the bright lights of Hollywood to discover the real people behind the legends. Behind the million-dollar smiles and perfectly staged family portraits, cinema's golden age concealed a horrifying epidemic of domestic tyranny. Fame cannot teach tenderness, and the entertainment industry's most idolized heroes often became their children's most ruthless dictators behind closed doors. You are unlocking the sealed archives of Hollywood Stars and Scars, a chilling dossier of the most deeply buried Hollywood scandals, where vulnerable offspring were treated as mere public relations props or emotional punching bags. This brutal cycle of vanity and psychological torment ultimately leads us to a fateful night in 1984, when a jealous patriarch executed the very voice of a generation. Why did the man who preached divine love pull the trigger on his own superstar son?
Behind the glitter, the scars remain. Welcome to Hollywood Stars and Scars.
Number 20. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford reigned supreme as the flawless queen of the silver screen, a vision of cinematic perfection. Flashing cameras captured her immaculate glamour, projecting an untouchable brand of elegance and maternal devotion to a loyal public. She was an unyielding studio-era powerhouse, curating a pristine image that demanded absolute adoration. Behind the heavy doors of her luxurious estate, that meticulously crafted facade fractured into a chilling reality. The cameras stopped rolling, but the demand for perfection morphed into an obsession with absolute control over her family. Her daughter Christina later exposed this hidden life, describing their upbringing as a relentless performance rooted in paralyzing fear. The true depth of this household tyranny remained tightly shielded by studio PR machinery. The glamorous illusion collapsed as accounts surfaced of a domestic tyrant who weaponized discipline. Mundane household items became sudden triggers for explosive rage, most infamously, a simple aluminum wire hanger, sparking terrifying nocturnal outbursts. The contrast was devastating. A beloved Hollywood icon forcing her terrified children into formal evening gowns just to scrub the mansion's floors. A legacy built on celluloid brilliance was permanently overshadowed by the irreversible exposure of this destructive private life. The silver screen's absolute perfectionist was defined by the hidden scars she inflicted far away from the spotlight. Number 19. Bing Crosby. Bing Crosby stood as the undisputed symbol of American holiday warmth, his smooth baritone voice acting as the definitive soundtrack for picture-perfect domestic bliss. Millions purchased records and tuned into broadcasts, completely captivated by the gentle, affable patriarch, projecting an untouchable aura of flawless familial harmony to a devoted audience. Beyond the festive studio sets and glowing fireplaces, a severely chilling reality ruled his heavily guarded estate. The public's favorite crooner operated as a cold, unyielding enforcer, relying on physical intimidation, belts and fists to maintain absolute, terror-driven discipline. Tears were strictly outlawed. His children were forcefully prohibited from expressing any natural emotion or vulnerability under his roof. Decades of this relentless psychological suppression manufactured a devastating private catastrophe that the media completely ignored to protect his lucrative brand. The crushing weight of silent obedience fractured his family fundamentally, leaving invisible wounds that no amount of public adoration could ever heal. Tragically, the profound trauma inflicted during these formative years ultimately cost two of his sons their lives, a deeply hidden consequence of this destructive environment. A carefully curated brand of seasonal cheer successfully shielded a household paralyzed by dictatorial cruelty. The man who sold the world its most comforting soundtrack left behind a private legacy defined entirely by irreversible emotional ruin. Number 18. Henry Fonda. Henry Fonda commanded the silver screen as the absolute embodiment of American righteousness, a pillar of quiet strength and morality. Audiences revered his stoic performances, projecting their ideals onto a cinematic hero who always stood on the right side of history. Flashbulbs illuminated his steady presence on red carpets, cementing a flawless public brand that the world implicitly trusted. Far removed from the glowing marquee lights, a devastating emotional disconnect governed his private estate. He could effortlessly command a room discussing art and politics for hours on end. Yet a paralyzing silence fell regarding his own flesh and blood. His daughter Jane Fonda later exposed this hidden life, revealing an agonizing truth. The actor, celebrated for profound on-screen empathy, never once inquired about her feelings. This deep psychological absence engineered a quiet but devastating domestic cruelty built entirely on emotional withholding rather than physical rage. The press championed his calm demeanor, while his family bore the tragic cost of an impenetrable wall. Decades of relentless neglect left permanent, invisible wounds, proving the nation's comforting father figure was fundamentally incapable of basic warmth. The beloved American hero rescued countless souls on celluloid, only to leave his own children stranded in a freezing, silent void of emotional abandonment. Number 17. Ethel Gum. Judy Garland captured the nation with unparalleled vocal brilliance, projecting an image of innocent wonder that captivated audiences. Beside her stood Ethel Gum, outwardly the ultimate devoted stage mother, managing a prodigy destined to conquer cinema. Flashbulbs painted a portrait of a fiercely supportive matriarch, guiding a generational talent toward unimaginable riches. The wholesome illusion shattered when the machinery behind this star-making factory demanded an unnatural pace, prioritizing box office returns over survival. When studio executives handed a 13-year-old powerful amphetamines to sustain relentless production schedules, her mother offered no resistance. Instead of protecting her daughter, Ethel calculated the financial upside, sanctioning a chemical routine that traded a childhood for marquee dominance. A tragic exploitation emerged, transforming a vibrant teenager into a lifelong captive of an unforgiving studio system. Reports stated that this calculated parental failure irreparably devastated the star's physical health, locking her in a destructive cycle of fame. The glamorous empire they built was entirely financed by an exhausted child whose well-being was sacrificed for the spotlight. The ultimate archetype of the ruthless stage mother proved that Hollywood's most dangerous figures were sometimes the parents cashing the checks. An iconic voice that comforted millions was systematically broken by the very woman assigned to protect it. Number 16. Ryan O'Neal. Ryan O'Neal dazzled audiences worldwide with an irresistible, boyish charm that quickly crowned him as one of cinema's most bankable leading men. Paparazzi lenses adored his effortless magnetism, relentlessly capturing a blockbuster idol whose brilliant smile and romantic appeal guaranteed absolute box office dominance. The glittering veneer of this beloved figure rapidly fractured the moment his 10-year-old daughter Tatum unexpectedly eclipsed his stardom by winning an Academy Award. Instead of celebrating her historic cinematic triumph, the acclaimed actor began viewing his own child as a direct, threatening industry competitor. a devastating psychological dynamic took root away from the flashbulbs, where natural parental pride was entirely replaced by a bitter, competitive envy over her sudden media prominence. Life inside their luxurious estate quickly devolved into a toxic environment, defined by intense professional resentment. He subjected the young prodigy to calculated mockery, systematically tearing down her confidence to soothe an increasingly fragile Hollywood ego. This relentless, quiet campaign of belittlement forced a globally celebrated child star to navigate her formative years feeling profoundly insignificant and deeply unwanted by her own father. The definitive romantic hero of a generation ultimately proved that Hollywood vanity can destroy even the most sacred familial bonds. Number 15, Mildred Turner. Lana Turner materialized on the silver screen as the ultimate studio-era siren, an impossibly glamorous icon whose blinding smile captivated global audiences. Vintage newsreels framed her alongside her mother Mildred, projecting an inspiring narrative of a fiercely devoted matriarch guiding her beautiful daughter through the dazzling heights of early fame. Beneath the shimmering gowns and manufactured press releases lay a deeply predatory origin story born from the crushing desperation of the Great Depression. Refusing to succumb to poverty, Mildred coldly calculated a permanent way out by transforming her teenage daughter into a lucrative commodity. By the fragile age of 16, the starlet was forcefully thrust into exclusive, high-stakes adult industry parties, aggressively shopped to influential studio executives. This calculated exploitation completely eradicated any semblance of a normal upbringing, trading a fundamental right to childhood for absolute marquee dominance. Reports indicated this unprotected exposure to Hollywood's darkest corners established a devastating PR crisis and a destructive cycle of fame leaving permanent psychological scars. The dazzling actress was effectively reduced to a financial lifeline, her innocence quietly auctioned off to secure their luxurious estate. The flawless illusion of a loving stage parent merely concealed a ruthless opportunist who willingly sacrificed her own daughter's youth for a taste of industry power. Number 14, Tippi Hedren. Tippi Hedren arrived on the silver screen as the ultimate icy blonde, a sophisticated muse handpicked by cinema's master of suspense to captivate the globe. Paparazzi lenses adored her perfectly coiffed elegance, projecting an aura of untouchable mystery and refined grace. Flashbulbs painted a picture of a triumphant leading lady who had conquered the highest echelons of the studio system. When her own meteoric rise stalled abruptly, that shattered ambition morphed into a relentless campaign to force her daughter, Melanie Griffith, to live out a stolen dream of fame. Strict, overarching control defined their household. Yet this rigid discipline masked a deeply negligent reality. At just 14 years old, the vulnerable teenager was inexplicably permitted to live alongside adult male actors, thrust unprotected into a fast-paced world of mature industry excess. This devastating parental contradiction fundamentally warped a young girl's understanding of affection and safety. Industry insiders claimed the aspiring starlet was left to navigate a turbulent emotional landscape completely unsupervised, learning how to survive love and fame through a deeply chaotic environment. A mother's lost cinematic glory was forcibly resurrected on the shoulders of an exploited teenager whose formative years were permanently hijacked by adult pressures. The celebrated Hitchcockian muse ultimately proved that the most terrifying Hollywood horrors are not found on a movie set, but in the reckless sacrifice of a daughter's childhood. Number 13, Anthony Perkins. Anthony Perkins immortalized himself as an intensely magnetic leading man, carving a permanent legacy into the bedrock of cinematic suspense. Paparazzi flashes constantly illuminated his striking features, capturing a universally acclaimed star who commanded the screen. He was the toast of the studio system, projecting an enigmatic, irresistible charm. The chilling shadows of his most famous performances ultimately bled into the secluded halls of his private residence. Haunted by the deep psychological wounds inflicted by his own emotionally absent father, the acclaimed actor tragically perpetuated that same devastating neglect. He retreated behind fortified walls of secrecy, transforming his home into a labyrinth of paralyzing silence and unspoken fears. Stifling distance replaced any semblance of parental warmth, leaving a family desperate to understand the stranger living under their roof. Reports stated the revered Hollywood icon became entirely unreachable, terrified of genuine emotional connection. His children were forced to navigate a profoundly isolating upbringing, trapped in the freezing orbit of an unknowable patriarch. This hidden life exposed a devastating cycle of inherited trauma that no amount of box office success could ever erase. The definitive icon of suspense proved that the deepest Hollywood scars are often passed down in perfect silence. Number 12. Rose Hovick. Gypsy Rose Lee and June Havoc dazzled vaudeville stages as a seemingly perfect sister act, projecting an aura of effortless talent and family unity. Backed by their fiercely dedicated mother, Rose Hovick, they appeared as the ultimate American showbiz success story. Flashbulbs captured a deeply devoted matriarch, tirelessly guiding her gifted daughters toward prestigious theatrical billings. The curtain hid a terrifying domestic dictatorship operated by a woman industry insiders definitively dubbed the stage mother from hell. Behind closed doors, extreme psychological manipulation completely replaced maternal care, forcing the young girls into agonizing, sleep-deprived rehearsals that shattered their physical limits. This relentless drive for dominance reached a shocking peak when a loaded gun was allegedly drawn to forcefully clear the path toward her daughter's stardom. Absolute Terror maintained this lucrative entertainment empire, sacrificing basic childhood safety for relentless box office returns. The glittering success they achieved was built on a foundation of profound exploitation, trapping the sisters in a destructive cycle of fame fueled by constant intimidation. Reports stated that the enduring trauma inflicted by their own protector left deep, invisible fractures. The ultimate architect of vaudeville royalty proved that the brightest marquee lights are often powered by unforgivable parental cruelty. Number 11. Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney exploded onto the silver screen as an unstoppable force of comedic energy, capturing the hearts of a transfixed American public. Paparazzi lenses eagerly chased his infectious charm, documenting a bankable superstar whose brilliant charisma guaranteed box office supremacy. Flashbulbs painted a portrait of an endlessly joyous entertainer, universally adored, and reigning supreme over the studio system's golden era. The relentless pursuit of that glowing spotlight demanded a total sacrifice of genuine domestic stability behind the gates of his private estate. While he beamed for the cameras, a hidden life exposed a fundamentally invisible father who traded familial presence for marquee dominance. Through a staggering cycle of 8 marriages and 9 children, the acclaimed icon completely surrendered his time to the intoxicating rush of fame. This absolute devotion to stardom engineered a quiet but devastating emotional void for the family forced to exist in his massive shadow. His grueling production schedules left behind a profound emptiness, denying his offspring the most basic paternal connection. The beloved cinematic titan was entirely unreachable at home, leaving behind a wreckage of shattered bonds that no amount of audience applause could ever repair. The most energetic performer of his generation proved that an irrepressible Hollywood smile can effectively mask a devastating legacy of profound paternal abandonment. Number 10. Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin conquered the silent era as the undisputed king of comedy, a cinematic genius who gifted joy to millions across a fractured globe. Vintage newsreels captured the beloved tramp, an immortal underdog whose gentle brilliance built an untouchable Hollywood empire. He was the industry's most revered pioneer, celebrated globally for projecting profound empathy on the silver screen. Beyond the studio gates that manufactured warmth, vanished entirely. The world's most famous entertainer operated as a relentless domestic dictator, enforcing a terrifyingly rigid regime within his private estate. He mandated absolute silence and blind obedience, micromanaging every conceivable detail of his children's existence. The crushing demand for perfection completely replaced paternal affection, establishing a hidden life, exposed only long after the cameras stopped rolling. Surviving under the immense shadow of a monumental legend proved to be a suffocating, lifelong burden for his offspring. Reports stated that this extreme control shattered their independence, leaving deep psychological fractures, masked by immense wealth. The children were perpetually trapped in a destructive cycle of fame, quietly enduring the emotional absolute zero of a father who saved his humanity strictly for paying audiences. The pioneer who taught the world how to smile left his own family paralyzed in a tragedy of unseen domestic tyranny. Number 9. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn defined the swashbuckling cinematic hero, a mesmerizing adventurer who easily seduced audiences with his effortless on-screen charisma. Paparazzi lenses constantly chased his rugged profile, meticulously documenting a legendary romantic idol, whose undeniable charm ruled the golden age of grand studio epics. He was Hollywood's ultimate leading man, projecting a fearless, magnetic brilliance that commanded absolute, unquestioning, worldwide adoration. Away from the glowing marquee lights and meticulously crafted studio sets, this celebrated charm instantly evaporated into a deeply toxic domestic reality. The heroic adventurer operated as a profoundly distant, cynical patriarch who actively derived twisted pleasure from constant psychological belittlement. Instead of nurturing his family, he subjected his own children to a relentless barrage of sarcastic cruelty, systematically mocking their physical appearance and natural intelligence. This unrelenting emotional warfare established a terrifyingly cold environment where vulnerability was ruthlessly punished behind closed doors. When his offspring inevitably broke down in tears under the crushing weight of his calculated insults, the globally adored actor would simply respond with chilling, mocking laughter. Reports stated that this hidden life exposed a devastating contradiction, proving the beloved icon's most authentic role was a devastating architect of familial pain. The silver screen's defining romantic hero was ultimately exposed as a cruel domestic villain who weaponized his own children's insecurities for sheer entertainment. Number 8. Loretta Young and Clark Gable. Loretta Young and Clark Gable reigned as cinematic royalty, projecting an immaculate aura of classic romance that enchanted millions. Paparazzi flashes illuminated their triumphant premieres, cementing an untouchable brand defined by prestige and moral perfection. They were glittering titans of a studio system demanding flawless idols. The glamorous illusion threatened to shatter when a clandestine affair resulted in a hidden pregnancy, instantly triggering a PR panic. To avoid a devastating scandal, a ruthless media cover-up was swiftly orchestrated, forcing the leading lady to vanish for months under absolute secrecy. The crisis was quietly buried through an elaborate deception where the actress eventually returned to publicly adopt her own biological daughter. This extreme maneuver protected lucrative box office returns, but forced a completely innocent child into a lifelong psychological labyrinth. Judy Lewis was raised entirely within a suffocating lie, deeply isolated by the haunting reality that she was a secret that was never supposed to exist. The legendary actors safeguarded their pristine empires, permanently sacrificing their daughter's fundamental right to a true identity. The ultimate price for an unparalleled legacy of silver screen romance was a completely innocent child forced to survive as a hidden ghost inside her own home. Number 7. Marvin Gaye Sr. Marvin Gaye redefined the soul of a generation, a brilliant musical visionary whose velvet voice commanded global adoration. Vintage concert footage and relentless paparazzi flashes captured a triumphant superstar bathing in the blinding glow of unprecedented industry power. He stood at the absolute pinnacle of the entertainment world, his platinum records projecting an aura of transcendent peace and profound emotional healing to millions. Far removed from the sold-out arenas, an oppressive shadow consumed his private world, cast by a radical preacher who fundamentally despised his own flesh and blood. Marvin Gaye Sr. viewed his son's staggering commercial success not as a triumph, but as an unforgivable sin. This fanatical patriarch violently dominated their household behind closed doors, weaponizing religious extremism to relentlessly punish the very fame that funded their comfortable existence. Decades of simmering resentment and suffocating domestic terror spiraled into an irreversible catastrophe just hours before the singer's 45th birthday. A hidden life exposed a devastating final confrontation that ended with a fatal gunshot, permanently extinguishing one of history's most extraordinary artistic voices. The grim reality was inescapable. The man who spent a lifetime preaching spiritual salvation ruthlessly struck down his own child in an act of unimaginable jealousy. The definitive architect of an era's music was permanently silenced by the terrifying ego of a father who could never forgive his son's brilliance. Number 6. Joe Jackson. The Jackson 5 revolutionized the music industry, projecting a flawless image of joyful, synchronized sibling perfection. Millions tuned into their electric performances, mesmerized by an incredibly talented family, radiating pure, infectious happiness. Behind this unprecedented musical empire stood Joe Jackson, the seemingly brilliant architect who carefully engineered a global pop phenomenon. The glittering stage lights effectively blinded the public to the ruthless psychological manipulation driving this hit-making machine. Operating more like a merciless military commander than a nurturing parent, the patriarch enforced absolute obedience through punishing rehearsals. Any slight deviation from perfection during these grueling sessions was immediately met with severe physical discipline and targeted verbal humiliation. This unrelenting pursuit of chart-topping supremacy permanently eradicated the fundamental safety of a normal childhood. While the world happily purchased millions of records, the young performers quietly endured profound emotional devastation behind heavily guarded studio doors. Industry insiders later confirmed that this extreme domestic dictatorship forged an untouchable commercial brand at the direct expense of basic human empathy. The most gifted star of the family, Michael spent the remainder of his life desperately attempting to heal the deep, invisible wounds inflicted by his first manager. The architect behind the most celebrated musical dynasty of a century proved that a flawless pop image can perfectly conceal a lifetime of profound parental cruelty. Number 5. Judy Garland. Judy Garland transcended her child star origins to become an undisputed legend of the screen, her voice a soaring testament to raw emotional power. Flashbulbs painted a glittering portrait of cinematic royalty, passing the torch, capturing a triumphant survivor standing proudly alongside her prodigious daughter, Liza Minnelli. They appeared as the ultimate Hollywood dynasty, a glamorous duo destined to inherit the absolute pinnacle of the entertainment industry. That shimmering legacy slowly eroded beneath the crushing weight of unhealed trauma and relentless chemical dependency. The very exploitation that forged her legendary career initiated a destructive cycle of fame transforming a beloved national treasure into an erratic, terrifying presence behind closed doors. Her private residence devolved into a chaotic environment where extreme emotional fragility completely overshadowed maternal stability, leaving her children entirely unprotected from her escalating psychological fractures. Navigating this turbulent reality forced a young daughter to abandon her own childhood, prematurely adopting the agonizing role of caretaker to an increasingly shattered icon. Reports stated that the legendary performer's profound instability engineered a devastating hidden life, trapping her family in the crossfire of her personal demons. The world relentlessly applauded a mesmerizing musical genius, completely blind to the terrifying domestic wreckage left in the wake of her tragic collapse. The definitive victim of Hollywood's golden age ultimately proved that deep studio scars are often a devastating inheritance. Number 4. Sean Connery. Sean Connery defined the ultimate cinematic spy, projecting an unflappable aura of magnetic charm and rugged resilience that completely revolutionized the global box office. Flashing paparazzi lenses eagerly documented an immaculate leading man, capturing a highly sophisticated icon whose tailored suits and effortless confidence commanded absolute international worship. He reigned supreme across the studio era as a symbol of untouchable masculinity, heavily marketed as a hero, seemingly impervious to any human weakness. Away from the dazzling premieres and luxury vehicles, this celebrated cinematic figure operated as an impenetrable, freezing wall to his own flesh and blood. The acclaimed actor mistakenly equated harsh discipline with parental affection, subjecting his son Jason to an overwhelmingly strict and intensely distant upbringing. The glamorous illusion quietly cracked behind heavily fortified estate doors, where the world's most desired man remained entirely incapable of offering basic emotional warmth to a vulnerable child. This relentless psychological distance manufactured a devastating private reality, completely shielded from the daily tabloid headlines. Decades of unyielding emotional absence profoundly fractured their bond, leaving behind a hidden life, exposed as a deeply tragic portrait of domestic isolation. The very stoicism that successfully crowned him a legendary silver screen titan ultimately destroyed the fundamental connection required to truly parent his offspring. The definitive action hero who repeatedly saved the world on celluloid actively chose to leave his own son stranded behind an indestructible fortress of ice. Number 3. Lucille Ball. Lucille Ball reigned as the undisputed queen of television comedy, a vibrant pioneer whose flawless timing revolutionized the entire entertainment industry. Millions of adoring viewers tuned in weekly, completely captivated by her infectious energy and the hilarious domestic joy she projected on screen. Flashbulbs and prestigious awards cemented her status as a universally beloved national treasure, building an untouchable Hollywood empire. Once the studio cameras stopped rolling, that iconic, warm television persona was instantly replaced by an environment of extreme, suffocating perfectionism. She carried the ruthless demands of a powerful network executive directly into her private residence, meticulously scrutinizing every single gesture her children made. Instead of utilizing physical discipline, she deliberately weaponized her affection, forcefully withdrawing love and basic maternal attention the moment her offspring failed to meet her impossible standards. This calculated emotional deprivation engineered a chillingly cold household that stood in devastating contrast to her universally celebrated comedic brand. Her children were forced to navigate their formative years in a relentless state of paralyzing caution, terrified of triggering another sudden freeze from their mother. Industry insiders claimed this hidden life exposed a profoundly toxic dynamic, trapping her family in an invisible cage where genuine warmth was strictly conditional. The unparalleled genius who taught an entire nation how to laugh ultimately maintained absolute control by weaponizing silence against her own flesh and blood. Number 2. Peter Sellers. Peter Sellers commanded the international box office as an absolute comedic mastermind, a cinematic chameleon who effortlessly dissolved into unforgettable characters. Flashbulbs constantly chased this celebrated icon, documenting a brilliant performer whose unmatched timing built an untouchable entertainment empire. He was widely regarded as the ultimate eccentric genius, projecting an aura of boundless creativity that captivated global audiences. When the studio lights dimmed, that beloved brilliance warped into severe paranoia and paralyzing domestic insecurity. He completely abandoned the role of a nurturing patriarch, actively choosing to weaponize his affection against his vulnerable children. Extreme, unpredictable mood swings engineered a chilling household, where rapid transitions from terrifying accusations of familial betrayal to manipulative, tearful apologies became a relentless psychological warfare. This destructive cycle of fame trapped his offspring in an invisible cage of profound emotional whiplash. Reports stated that his complete lack of basic empathy manufactured an environment of absolute cruelty, leaving his family terrified of an unstable father. He demanded total devotion while offering nothing but devastating emotional chaos within his luxury estate. Millions applauded a man who could become anyone on screen, blind to the agonizing reality his family silently endured. The definitive genius of character acting ultimately proved that the most intricate Hollywood masks are often meticulously constructed to conceal a terrifyingly empty heart. Number 1. Osgood Perkins. Osgood Perkins commanded the prestigious stages of Broadway, projecting a sophisticated aura of theatrical brilliance that captivated early 20th century audiences. Vintage press clippings documented a highly respected dramatic pioneer whose commanding presence guaranteed packed theaters and universal critical adoration. He reigned supreme under the theater lights, cultivating an impeccable public brand defined entirely by artistic prestige. The glamorous illusion of this celebrated performer instantly shattered behind the heavy doors of his private residence, revealing a chilling patriarch. Instead of offering parental warmth, he fundamentally viewed his young son Anthony as an inconvenient burden rather than a joy. This hidden life exposed a terrifyingly absent father who strictly maintained a crushing wall of emotional silence, withholding basic affection from his own flesh and blood. Though his life abruptly ended when his son was merely 5 years old, that brief window inflicted permanent psychological devastation. This profound domestic neglect manufactured an invisible void, cementing the deep-seated anxiety and haunting quietness that would later define the younger Perkins's legendary cinematic persona. The celebrated stage actor engineered a tragic cycle of generational trauma, passing down a devastating inheritance of emotional abandonment that ultimately fractured his grandchildren. The revered theatrical titan proved that the most agonizing industry scars are often inflicted through absolute silence. We often consume Hollywood scandals as cheap entertainment, forgetting the shattered childhoods and human collateral left in the flashbulb's wake. This archive at Hollywood Stars and Scars proves that surviving the fame machine requires the profound courage to walk away. When sanity is traded for vanity, the spotlight doesn't illuminate, it burns those forced to stand in it. Protect your peace, because no standing ovation is worth a destroyed soul. When the applause dies and the velvet ropes are packed away, the silence left behind is deafening. A flawless public image is often just a beautifully painted prison, hiding fractured lives the audience was never meant to witness. To unseal the next classified reel of buried Hollywood scandals, subscribe to Hollywood Stars and Scars. Join us as we decipher the chilling truths the industry paid millions to protect before the press erased the evidence entirely. Legends are forged in silver, but the scars are carved in stone.
Hollywood once made millions of people believe it accepted every version of a person. But behind the glamorous lights, many actors could play kings, superheroes, or dream lovers, while still being afraid to publicly acknowledge the person they truly loved. A single photograph answer or admission could make contracts disappear and put an entire career at risk of collapse. Today we will explore 25 stories about privacy, the fear of judgment, and the price of hiding your true self in a Hollywood that constantly demands perfection. The deeper you go into this list, the more you realize that the brightest places sometimes cast the longest shadows. If you enjoy honest stories from behind Hollywood's glamour, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you do not miss our upcoming videos. Behind the glitter, the scars remain. Welcome to Hollywood Stars and Scars. Number 25, Cooper Kutch. With his handsome face, vulnerable eyes, and slightly old-fashioned presence, Cooper Kutch looks like a star Hollywood designed specifically for leading roles. After They Them, he attracted even more attention when he portrayed Eric Menendez in Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story. Cooper's performance did not rely on loudness. He used restraint, silence, and a suffocating sense of tension to make it impossible for audiences to look away. But before millions of people knew his name, Cooper had to hear a comment so cold, it was almost unbelievable. An acting teacher told him he was not getting roles because his voice sounded too gay. They were only a few simple words, but they exposed one of Hollywood's oldest habits. An actor can change his weight, hair, and the way he walks, but when his voice reveals who he truly is, the industry treats it like a flaw that needs to be corrected. I have always found this story both heartbreaking and infuriating. Cooper did not lack talent. The problem was that people in positions of power wanted him to make himself smaller so he would be easier to sell. Instead of doing that, he continued living openly, continued auditioning, and allowed his acting ability to speak for him. If one sentence can make a young person question their entire future, the next story shows how the strength of a family can help someone move beyond that fear. Number 24. Lux Pascal. Many viewers first heard about Lux Pascal because she is Pedro Pascal's younger sister. That is a very large shadow to live under. Pedro has become one of the most beloved faces in the world, while Lux often appears in headlines as an extension of his story. But seeing her only through that family connection ignores years of education, performing, and working to build a place for herself through her own ability. Lux has worked in Chilean theater and television, appeared in Narcos, and later continued her training at Juilliard. In 2021, she publicly came out as a transgender woman. Pedro shared a photograph of his sister with a loving message, calling her his sister, his heart, and the Lux of the family. At a time when many transgender people still face ridicule, that response was more than a beautiful gesture. It was like a shield. However, the support of her famous brother also created a paradox. Lux became more visible, but she was sometimes seen less as an independent artist. She had to prove that she was not simply Pedro Pascal's sister or a headline about gender identity. She was an actress who had taken her training seriously. And while Lux had to fight to be recognized by her own name, the next person had to fight to make the public understand that a photograph of love does not necessarily have to be a confession. Number 23. Yannick Schumann. In December 2020, Yannick Schumann posted a black and white photograph with his partner, Felix Crook. There was no long speech, no media campaign, no exclusive story sold to a magazine. It was simply a tender moment between two men. But almost immediately, the media described it as his coming out, as though an ordinary part of his life had suddenly become a shocking public event. Before that photograph, Yannick was already a familiar actor in Germany. He had appeared in Center of My World, The Aftermath, Monster Hunter, and the series Sisi. Audiences knew his face, but many people still automatically assumed that a male actor's private life had to follow the story the public wanted. Yannick later explained that he had never deliberately hidden himself. He simply did not consider his private life to be property that strangers had the right to demand. He also joined the Act Out movement alongside many German artists, calling on the film and theater industries to expand opportunities for LGBTQ actors. What impresses me is that Yannick did not turn openness into a performance. He used it to raise a larger question about the right to work without having to pretend. The next case is even more complicated, because that man had lived honestly with the people who mattered for decades, while the public knew almost nothing. Number 22. Richard Armitage. Richard Armitage once appeared on screen with long hair, heavy armor, and a deep, commanding voice as Thorin Oakenshield in The Hobbit. To millions of viewers, he represented the image of traditional masculine strength. Before that, North and South and Spooks had made him one of the most beloved faces on British television. No one looked at Thorin and imagined that the actor behind him had once worried that a private question could strike directly at his career. In 2023, Richard said that he had been open with the people who truly mattered since he was 19 years old. He also confirmed that he had a male partner while continuing to protect his partner's identity and the details of their relationship from public scrutiny. This is a boundary the public often chooses to forget. Honesty does not mean someone must open their entire emotional home so strangers can walk inside, search through it, and offer their opinions. Richard grew up in an environment where gay people were mocked. Words heard during youth do not disappear simply because someone becomes famous. They can follow a person into audition rooms, film sets, and interviews decades later. He did not create a sensational revelation. He simply stopped avoiding a truth that had always existed. But the next person could no longer keep that truth in silence because the silence itself had begun to wear him down. Number 21. Jared Carmichael. Jared Carmichael walked onto the stage in his 2022 special, Rothaniel, carrying a secret that had existed for far too long. Audiences were used to seeing him as a sharp comedian who could turn race politics and arguments within American families into intelligent comedy. But that night, laughter was no longer a place to hide. It became a road leading directly into his deepest fear. Jared came out as gay during a show about family secrets, shame, and the feeling of carrying part of yourself like a burden. The moment was not written as a punchline. It contained silence, tension, and the feeling of someone removing a lock he had worn for far too long. Oh my God, sometimes the truth does not create an explosion. It simply makes a room suddenly become frighteningly quiet. After Nathaniel Jared did not disappear as Hollywood's old warnings had suggested he might, he hosted Saturday Night Live, took on a role at the Golden Globes, and appeared in Poor Things. His career continued moving forward, except the man standing in front of the camera no longer had to divide himself into two different versions. While Jared turned his admission into art, the next star chose an attitude so calm that it made prejudice itself seem outdated.
Number 20. Andrew Scott.
When Andrew Scott appeared as Moriarty in Sherlock, he nearly stole every scene with his unpredictable smile and carefully controlled madness. Years later, his role as the priest in Fleabag turned him into a cultural phenomenon. Audiences gave the character a nickname filled with desire, while the internet became obsessed with the image of a man who seemed both gentle and dangerous. But Andrew never wanted his real life to be turned into a product for public consumption. He publicly said he was gay in a 2013 interview, but he did not use the language of a confession. Andrew spoke about it as a natural part of himself. No apology, no justification, no acceptance of the idea that his sexuality had to become the center of every story he told. That attitude may sound simple, but in an industry that constantly tries to place artists into easily marketable boxes, it was a powerful statement. All of Us Strangers later showed that Andrew could bring loneliness, love, and loss to the screen with a vulnerability that was almost painful. What mattered was not that he was a gay actor playing a gay character. What mattered was that he made audiences realize the pain belonged to all human beings. And while Andrew protected his private life through calmness, the next person directly proved that one of Hollywood's oldest fears was wrong. Number 19. Jonathan Bailey. Jonathan Bailey was once warned that an openly gay actor would struggle to become a leading man, but Bridgerton proved the opposite by turning him into a romantic ideal for millions of viewers. Fellow Travelers and Wicked then continued to demonstrate his versatility across completely different worlds. 3 roles, 3 genres, and 3 contrasting images became the clearest possible answer to those who once wanted to limit Jonathan's talent because of his identity. Jonathan did not lose his ability to transform into a character by living honestly. On the contrary, he proved that an actor does not need to share the identity of every character to bring them to life. What made viewers believe in Anthony Bridgerton was not Jonathan's private life, but his talent. However, the next person entered fame at an extremely young age and immediately had to face the question of whether representation could unintentionally become a new kind of cage. Number 18. Joe Locke. Joe Locke was only 16 when he beat thousands of applicants to play Charlie Spring in Heartstopper, transforming a teenager with almost no experience into a face loved by millions of young viewers. Although he had come out to his mother at the age of 12, the show's success quickly tied his private life to his character, from his identity and dating life to his responsibility as a representative. His story shows that a young actor can bring hope to a community while still deserving to keep certain parts of his own life private. Joe later appeared on Broadway and joined the Marvel Universe in Agatha All Along, where his character was revealed to be Billy Maximoff, also known as Wiccan. That transition was very important. He was no longer only Charlie Spring. He began proving that his career could include teenage romance, musical theater magic, and more complicated areas of darkness. But you will not believe how cruel the story of the actor beside him became. Number 17. Kit Connor. Kid Connor was only 18 when some Heartstopper viewers began confusing his role as Nick Nelson with his private life, examining every photograph and accusing him of exploiting the LGBTQ community. In October 2022, Kit was forced to come out as bisexual through a brief and bitter statement, pointing out that the internet had pressured a young man into revealing something that should have belonged to him alone. His story shows how support can become pressure when the public forgets that no one has the right to demand that someone reveal their identity before they are ready.
This is the part that genuinely makes me angry. A show about safety and the right to choose was used by some viewers to take that same right of choice away from an actor. Kit continued working, appeared on stage, and expanded his career, but the incident should be remembered as a warning. Representation does not give viewers ownership over the real person behind a character. The next star chose to respond to scrutiny with a much simpler weapon: humor.
Number 16. Omar Apollo.
Omar.
Apollo allowed his music, which blends R&B, pop, soul, and Latin influences, to tell his story, especially when Evergreen brought him closer to a mainstream audience. When people questioned whether he was using gay themes to attract attention, Omar responded with humor and directness. He did not hide his identity, but he also refused to turn it into a promotional campaign or an explanation that strangers believed they had the right to demand. After receiving music nominations, Omar also moved into film, with Luca Guadagnino's Queer appearing alongside Daniel Craig and Drew Starkey. It was a bold transition, showing that he had no intention of allowing one hit song or one label to define the limits of his career. While Omar used confidence to dissolve intrusive questions, the next person once chose silence for the sake of safety and mental health, even while standing before one of the greatest opportunities in British television.
Number 15. Ncuti Gatwa. Ncuti Gatwa became the heart of Sex Education through his role as Eric Effiong, a character who was funny, wounded, rebellious, and full of life. In 2023, he publicly identified as queer and explained that he had previously limited what he shared to protect his safety and mental health. Ncuti emphasized that he had never considered himself to be hiding, but had simply chosen silence, showing that privacy does not always come from shame. Sometimes it is how a person protects themselves from judgment.
After Sex Education,
Ncuti became the first black actor to take on the leading role of the Doctor in Doctor Who on a long-term basis. He brought energy, fashion, and emotion to the Doctor, but the achievement also brought racist and prejudiced reactions. It is unbelievable that some people thought a character who travels through time and changes form should not be allowed to change. But while Ncuti grew through a wave of controversy, the next person literally grew up before the eyes of millions.
Number 14. Noah Schnapp. Noah Schnapp grew up in front of millions of viewers through his role as Will Byers in Stranger Things, a character who always carried fear, pain, and the feeling of being left behind. As Will's sexuality gradually became clearer, the public began connecting the character to the actor's private life. In January 2023, Noah came out as gay in a lighthearted TikTok video and said his family seemed to have known for a long time. But behind that joyful moment was the pressure of discovering himself while millions of people had already been discussing him. Becoming famous at a young age can make the boundary between a person and a character almost disappear. Viewers felt they knew Noah because they had watched Will cry, feel afraid, and grow up. But a performance is not a license to enter an actor's private life. Noah still has an entire career ahead of him, and he deserves to be judged by his future choices, not only by one announcement. The next star attracted attention because he did not try to hide the messy choices he had made.
Number 13. Lucas Gage.
Lucas Gage gained attention through Euphoria, The White Lotus, and You,
playing attractive characters who always carried an underlying instability. He had spoken openly about sexuality, but did not want to be limited by rigid labels. In 2023, Lucas married hairstylist Chris Appleton in a wedding that received major media attention, but the marriage ended only a few months later, turning a story once viewed as a fairy tale into a breakup that unfolded directly before the public.
Lucas later looked back on that period with a mixture of humor and regret. He did not try to create a perfect version of events to protect his image. Perhaps that is why people continued paying attention to him. He allowed himself to make mistakes in public, something Hollywood often refuses to forgive in young people. However, the next case involves more than romance or fame. It also contains the pain of loss that pushed a former Disney star into a much more dangerous place.
Number 12. Karen Brar.
Millions of viewers remember Karen Brar from Jessie Bunked and Diary of a Wimpy Kid as the funny, innocent face of a Disney star. Behind the camera, however, he had to face questions about himself, family expectations, and the pain that followed the loss of his close friend, Cameron Boyce. In 2023, Karen came out as bisexual in a sincere essay, while also discussing a period of declining mental health and the exhaustion of having to hide the darker corners within himself. What gives Karan's story value is not the shocking details. It is his admission that he needed help. A former child star does not always have the language needed to express pain, because from a young age, they are taught to smile at the right moment and say the right thing. Karan began healing when he stopped trying to perform the role of someone who was fine. The next story shows how sometimes a single song can speak on behalf of millions of people.
Number 11. Callum Scott.
In 2015, Callum Scott connected with the Britain's Got Talent audience through an emotional performance of Dancing on My Own, opening the door to an international music career. Later, the song No Matter What told the story of his coming out, his fear of rejection, and the love he received from his mother. Although he lost some friends after living honestly, Callum turned private pain into music that helped many people feel understood.
No Matter What does not deny the pain. It places another possibility beside that pain, being loved without conditions. For many listeners, Callum was not only singing his own story. He gave them words they could send to their parents, friends, or even themselves. But while Callum found freedom through popular music, the next person built his career through heavier theatrical stories, where the history of an entire community continues to leave scars.
Number 10. Dino Fetcher. Dino Fetcher developed his career through British theatre and television, with roles in Banana Humans, Years and Years, Paranoia, and Foundation. As an openly gay actor, he often participates in projects that allow LGBTQ characters to appear as complete human beings who can be romantic, selfish, funny, or capable of making mistakes. Through that work, Dino helps move them beyond the tragic figures, jokes, or supporting tools they had been reduced to on screen for decades. In The Normal Heart, he played Felix Turner, a character caught between love and the horror of the AIDS crisis. The performance earned Dino an Olivier nomination, but more importantly, it reminded audiences that this history was not simply a collection of numbers. It was about human beings loving one another while society turned its back on them. While Dino used the stage to keep memories alive, the next star once erased signs of his relationship from social media because he feared losing a role.
Number 9. Hunter Doohan. Before becoming famous as Tyler Galpin in Wednesday, Hunter Doohan had already impressed audiences alongside Bryan Cranston in Your Honor with his ability to shift from innocence into darkness. However, before the final audition, he hid photographs of himself with his partner on Instagram,
because he worried that being gay might make casting directors believe he was not right for a straight character. That moment shows how an actor may sometimes have to hide his real life simply to be given the opportunity to express emotions in front of a camera. Hunter later married producer Fielder Jewett in 2022. Looking back, he admitted that he did not want to continue living with that fear. The irony is that most of Hunter's best-known roles have been straight characters, proving that the prejudice he once feared had nothing to do with his ability to act. But while Hunter once hid images of love because he feared losing work, the next person shows that queer stories can now stand at the center of a romantic comedy without asking for permission.
Number 8. Zane Phillips. Zane Phillips attracted attention as Dex in Fire Island, a charming but deeply flawed character in a modern version of Pride and Prejudice. He later appeared in Legacies and Glamorous, exploring genres ranging from the supernatural and workplace comedy to fashion satire. As an openly gay actor, Zane shows that his identity does not limit him to one kind of role or one emotional range. This is a quiet but important change. In the past, an openly gay actor could be viewed as suitable only for roles written specifically around sexuality. Zane belongs to a generation that is breaking down that idea. He can live openly without turning every interview into an explanation of his private life. Even so, the next person had to travel a longer road from playing a teenage villain in a horror film to openly showing a completely different person away from the screen. Number 7. Nicholas Hamilton. Nicholas Hamilton became widely known for playing Henry Bowers, the cruel bully in It, although he had already shown emotional depth in Captain Fantastic. In real life, Nicholas is openly gay, moved from Australia to Los Angeles, and pursued both acting and music. He does not deny the role that made him famous, but he also refuses to let the image of a violent character determine how the public sees his entire identity. Nicholas did not need a dramatic revelation. His story lies in the process of growing up as a young actor, gradually became more comfortable appearing publicly in his own voice. He became known for playing someone who created fear, while his real life revealed far more vulnerability and creativity. However, the next case surprised audiences because one man lived among film politics and the media while keeping his most important relationship away from the spotlight for more than a decade. Number 6. Kal Penn. Kal Penn is known for Harold and Kumar, House-designated survivor, and his time working at the White House during Barack Obama's administration. Although his career extended from film into politics, he always guarded his private life carefully. In 2021, in his memoir, You Can't Be Serious, Kal revealed that he had been with his partner, Josh, for more than a decade and that they were engaged, surprising many people because he had kept the relationship outside the media's scrutiny for years. Kal said that he recognized his romantic orientation later than some people. He also respected Josh's wish to keep his identity and life private. That is particularly meaningful. When revealing one part of himself, Kal did not turn his partner into a media accessory. He shared enough to live honestly, without giving every detail to the public. And while Kal waited until he felt ready, the next person spoke his truth during a live stream where only a few seconds were enough for it to spread around the world. Number 5. Jack Dylan Grazer. Jack Dylan Grazer became famous at a very young age through It's Shazam and Luca, thanks to his loud, energetic, and memorable acting style. In 2021, he came out as bisexual during an Instagram livestream with a brief answer that quickly became a headline. His story shows the unique pressure young actors face when a moment that seems fleeting can be recorded, removed from its context, and remain online longer than the memory of the person who said it. Jack continued taking on many types of characters, from superheroes and animation to more complicated coming-of-age stories such as We Are Who We Are. What matters is that he did not allow that announcement to become his entire career. He is still too young to be confined by any role or label. But the next person works in an industry even more dependent on image than film, where the face, body, and romantic life can all become part of a brand.
Number 4. Jordan Barrett.
Jordan Barrett was discovered as a teenager and quickly became one of the most prominent male models of his generation. His angular face, blonde hair, and rebellious presence helped him appear in many major fashion campaigns where images are often controlled so carefully that a human being can easily be reduced to a perfect photograph. In 2021, Jordan married Fernando Casablancas in a private ceremony in Ibiza, attended by many well-known figures from the fashion world. The wedding was not intended as a statement. It was simply two men publicly choosing to be together. In an industry that once celebrated gay beauty while remaining cautious about gay love, that sense of normalcy became a meaningful change.
Number 3. Ralf Schumacher.
In Formula One, Ralf Schumacher won 6 Grand Prix races, but always competed under the shadow of his brother, Michael Schumacher. In July 2024, he publicly revealed his relationship with Etienne Bousquet-Cassagne through a simple photograph that carried deep meaning in a conservative, male-dominated sport. Ralf was previously married to Cora Schumacher and has a son named David. Coming out did not erase the past. It allowed the public to see who he truly is in the present. In May 2026, Ralf and Etienne married in Saint-Tropez, beginning a new chapter after years of living under public scrutiny.
Number 2.
Sir Ian McKellen. In 1988, before he became Gandalf or Magneto, Ian McKellen was already a respected stage actor, but did not yet have the protection that came with global fame. While Britain debated Section 28, he came out as gay on the BBC, even though he understood that the decision could affect his career. It was not only a personal admission, but also a political act for people who had not yet been given the opportunity to speak for themselves. Ian later co-founded Stonewall in the United Kingdom and spent many years fighting for LGBTQ rights. Away from the screen, he used his own voice to challenge prejudice and help younger actors believe that living honestly did not mean losing their future. The number 1 position belongs to an artist who did not merely wait for Hollywood to recognize his talent, but also helped change the entire industry before that recognition arrived.
Number 1. Coleman Domingo.
Coleman Domingo did not become famous overnight. He spent years working in theater, writing plays, directing, and accepting small roles before Hollywood recognized him as a leading man. Audiences knew him from Fear the Walking Dead, Euphoria, and later Rustin. But behind that calm presence was the long journey of an artist who had to wait far longer than those who were favored from the beginning. Coleman is openly gay and has been married to Raul Domingo since 2014 after a romantic chance encounter. With Rustin, he brought Bayard Rustin, a black gay activist who had been overlooked by history, back to the center of the screen. Coleman's success did not come from luck, but from decades of persistence in his profession, proving that artists sometimes do not lack talent. Hollywood simply takes far too long to see them. Looking back at these 25 people, what matters is not a series of shocking coming-out moments, but the way each person reclaimed the right to tell their own story. Some spoke on stage, wrote memoirs, posted a photograph, or used music. But no one has the right to force someone to reveal their sexuality, relationship, or identity before they are ready. Public curiosity is never more important than a person's safety and privacy. These stories also show how love from family, friends, and colleagues can become a shield, while one mocking comment can leave a wound that lasts for years. Hollywood is changing, but prejudice still exists in audition rooms, the media, and social networks. What audiences can do is stop turning identity into entertainment, respect boundaries, and allow each person to decide which parts of their life they want to share. If any of these stories moved you or changed the way you see a star, leave a comment below. I would love to know which person you like the most and which story surprised you the most. Do not forget to hit like, subscribe to Hollywood Stars and Scars, and turn on notifications so you do not miss the stories hidden behind the glamour. Sometimes, the bravest thing a person can do is not stand before millions of people, but look at themselves and stop apologizing for who they are. I will see you in the next story.
Millions are minted from their innocent smiles, yet behind locked studio gates, these young performers are fed directly into an industrial machine. This is the systematic dismantling of human sanity for our entertainment, proving that the ultimate price of early fame is paid in blood. You are unlocking the restricted case files of Hollywood Stars and Scars, a sobering record of the most devastating Hollywood scandals the industry desperately tried to bury. The glittering facade quickly gives way to a horrific pipeline of psychological destruction. But how does a globally adored sitcom prodigy, bringing joy to millions of living rooms, end up feeling like he didn't even exist, taking his own life before his 20s?
Behind the glitter, the scars remain. Welcome to Hollywood Stars and Scars. Number 20, Jake Lloyd.
Thrust into the absolute center of a cinematic galaxy, his cherubic face instantly became the driving force behind the most anticipated prequel in film history. He confidently walked the grandest global premieres, a bright-eyed prodigy embodying a timeless legacy alongside seasoned Hollywood royalty. Paparazzi lenses eagerly captured a golden child destined to command the stars. Stepping away from the blinding premiere lights and massive green screens, the harsh reality of unprecedented sudden superstardom rapidly mutated. Upon returning to a normal classroom setting, relentless and brutal torment from his peers transformed his childhood dream into a waking psychological nightmare. A toxic wave of public pressure and intense schoolyard bullying silently broke the vulnerable boy behind the monumental franchise.
The heavy emotional toll eventually spilled out of the shadows, materializing in leaked police dashcam footage and devastating psychiatric diagnoses. A confirmed grueling battle with severe schizophrenia ultimately stripped away his independence, culminating in a grim incarceration that permanently erased his innocent on-screen persona. The ultimate price of anchoring a billion-dollar sci-fi empire was the complete, agonizing destruction of his own mind.
Number 19, Edward Furlong. A rebellious smirk, an oversized jacket, and a breakout role in a generation-defining sci-fi blockbuster instantly transformed an unknown teen into a global icon. He was the face of the future, riding a wave of unprecedented adulation on endless red carpets. Paparazzi scrambled to capture the untamed charisma of a young star seemingly destined to rule the box office forever. Behind the blinding flashbombs, the suffocating pressure of sudden superstardom began to exact a devastating toll. Stripped of a normal childhood, he spiraled into a destructive cycle of fame-seeking and escape in the darkest corners of the industry. Whispered rumors of erratic behavior soon bled into undeniable tabloid headlines, shattering the carefully constructed Hollywood illusion. The tragic reality was eventually cemented in police reports and grim courtroom appearances.
A harrowing battle with severe substance dependencies derailed his once promising career, replacing standing ovations with booking photos and repeated legal incarcerations. The studio machinery manufactured a cinematic savior for humanity, only to abandon the real boy to fight his own devastating demons alone.
Number 18. Drake Bell.
A guitar-strumming teen idol with a trademark sweep of hair, he was once the undisputed king of a children's television network empire. Smiling broadly for teen magazine covers and bathed in the glow of millions of adoring fans, his brand was the epitome of clean-cut adolescent perfection. He held the power of a top-tier network in his hands, seemingly immune to the notorious child star curse.
The meticulously crafted facade slowly eroded as financial ruin and erratic public behavior began dominating the tabloid cycles. Whispers of unpaid debts morphed into a harsh public bankruptcy, signaling the first crack in his multi-million-dollar image. Soon after, a highly publicized arrest for driving under the influence illuminated a hidden life, unspooling far away from the bright studio lights. The ultimate blow to his legacy arrived in grim court documents rather than script pages. Convicted of endangering a minor, the former sitcom hero was permanently stripped of his pristine reputation, trading manufactured laughter for the cold reality of criminal sentencing. A childhood spent selling innocent fantasies left behind a terrifyingly shattered reality. Number 17. Amanda Bynes. She possessed an undeniable comedic timing, instantly making her the undisputed queen of early 2000s teen cinema. Red carpets became her personal playground, while a massive network built an entire sketch comedy empire around her infectious girl-next-door charm. Retiring abruptly at just 24 years old sent shockwaves through the industry, signaling a catastrophic shift behind closed doors. Hungry paparazzi lenses aggressively pivoted from glamorous premieres to capturing a devastating PR crisis as alarming headlines detailed a string of arrests for driving under the influence. Her meticulously protected image splintered under the relentless scrutiny of a merciless media cycle. Behind erratic public exits and chaotic tabloid updates, a harrowing hidden life was ultimately exposed. Medical evaluations and leaked court documents confirmed severe psychological battles, including a bipolar diagnosis, stripping away her independence and placing her under a strict legal conservatorship. A massive multi-million-dollar comedic empire was successfully built on her teenage shoulders, yet she was left completely alone to navigate the suffocating confines of a court-mandated existence. Number 16. Orlando Brown. Possessing undeniable comedic charm, he was a foundational pillar of a supernatural teen sitcom empire. He was a fixture on a powerhouse television network, his beaming smile splashed across exclusive red carpets alongside a globally beloved cast. He appeared perfectly insulated by the massive corporate machine profiting from his youth. That polished armor shattered spectacularly as a devastating legal crisis unfolded in real time. Between 2016 and 2022, bright studio lights were permanently replaced by the harsh glare of police sirens. A relentless cascade of alarming public incidents eroded his pristine reputation, transforming a charismatic star into a fixture of grim tabloid speculation. Official court documents soon detailed a tragic fall from grace, confirming severe criminal charges involving domestic violence, illicit substance possession, and physical battery. The public watched in stunned silence as haunting mugshots entirely erased the innocent persona he was highly paid to project. A family-friendly conglomerate successfully monetized his early years, yet ultimately left a fractured man to navigate a devastating legal reality completely alone. Number 15. Judy Garland.
With a transcendent voice and pure innocence, Judy Garland became the undisputed golden girl of a legendary cinema empire. Swept into unparalleled international stardom, her wide-eyed charm dominated grand premieres and captivated millions. To the public, she was the quintessential American sweetheart, flawlessly manufactured to sparkle under the blinding lights of Hollywood's golden age. Behind the glittering Technicolor fantasy, MGM executives were quietly engineering a destructive cycle of fame. At just 16, she was subjected to punishing diets and a mandated regimen of heavy stimulants and sedatives to survive grueling production schedules. The studio machinery that built her iconic persona silently embedded the roots of an inescapable dependency, trading a teenager's well-being for historic box office returns. What began as a corporate-sanctioned chemical reliance spiraled into a harrowing lifelong battle hidden behind desperate comebacks and fading ovations. The media continuously speculated on her erratic public appearances, while powerful executives distanced themselves from the devastating physical collapse that ultimately claimed her life. Hollywood's most enduring cinematic magic was successfully manufactured, but it required the heartbreaking sacrifice of an exploited child.
Number 14. Margot Willison. A precocious smile and enchanting on-screen presence quickly established her as the defining child star of the 1990s. She anchored beloved family classics, effortlessly stealing scenes in multi-million-dollar box office hits with an infectious intellectual charm. Millions of theatergoers saw a fiercely independent young girl who could conquer any obstacle with a magical twinkle in her eye. Beneath the heavily marketed veneer of whimsical childhood innocence, a suffocating psychological reality was secretly taking hold. Industry insiders praised her undeniable talent, entirely oblivious to the crushing weight of severe anxiety mounting off-camera. By the fragile age of 12, while still navigating the intense glare of a global spotlight, her meticulously protected world began to silently fracture from within. The enchanting cinematic illusions were quietly replaced by a harrowing, untelevised battle against severe panic attacks, paralyzing depression, and obsessive-compulsive disorder. Choosing survival over superstardom, she walked away from a lucrative career, leaving behind a legacy frozen in time. Hollywood expertly captures the magic of youth on film, but entirely ignores the invisible torment festering when the cameras finally stop.
Number 13. Haley Joel Osment. A whispered line delivered by an angelic face redefined the psychological thriller genre forever. As the undisputed breakout star of a cinematic phenomenon, his haunting performance earned him an Academy Award nomination before he even entered middle school. Paparazzi flashes illuminated a brilliant young prodigy, sharing the screen with industry titans, cementing his status as the most sought-after child actor of his generation. The applause eventually faded, leaving behind the crushing weight of astronomical expectations. Transitioning from a globally recognized child prodigy to a working adult actor proved to be an insurmountable hurdle. Stripped of the protective bubble of youth, he struggled profoundly to adapt to a daunting post-fame reality. Seeking refuge from the relentless spotlight, he plummeted into a deeply destructive cycle of substance abuse. Unsettling tabloid headlines starkly replaced his once pristine red carpet image, cementing his place among child stars whose lives tragically unraveled. A chilling cinematic masterpiece granted him immortality on the silver screen, but the agonizing transition into adulthood left him haunted by the ghosts of his own fractured reality.
Number 12. Jodie Sweetin.
A bouncy blonde catchphrase slinger, she captured the hearts of millions as the middle child of America's favorite television family. She was a central pillar of an unstoppable sitcom juggernaut, flashing a picture-perfect smile on exclusive red carpets.
To the public, she represented an idealized childhood, completely sheltered under the umbrella of a primetime phenomenon. When the studio cameras finally went dark, a devastating identity crisis immediately filled the void left by canceled call sheets. Stripped of the only structured routine she had ever known, the polished star desperately searched for a new sense of self. Whispered rumors soon hinted at a drastic departure from her squeaky clean, family-friendly branding. An agonizing private reality ultimately took hold as she plunged into a grueling, decade-long battle with severe substance dependency. What began as a post-fame rebellion rapidly escalated into a destructive cycle, completely erasing the bubbly persona millions once adored. The television industry meticulously constructs flawless childhoods for mass consumption, leaving the real children entirely lost in the deafening silence that follows.
Number 11. Jonathan Taylor Thomas. Crowned as the ultimate 1990s teen heartthrob, his instantly recognizable face dominated every major magazine cover. He provided the voice for an iconic animated blockbuster and served as the magnetic anchor of a top-rated family sitcom. To the outside world, he was the perfectly packaged adolescent superstar, navigating exclusive red carpets with an effortless, boyish charm. The blinding glare of his manufactured stardom eventually became an unbearable burden. Beneath the meticulously curated teen idol persona, an agonizing identity crisis was silently tearing him apart. The immense, unyielding pressure of public scrutiny slowly eroded his carefully protected boundaries, turning everyday life into a suffocating psychological trap. Choosing self-preservation over a lucrative Hollywood legacy, he quietly orchestrated an abrupt and permanent withdrawal from the acting industry. This sudden disappearance from the spotlight was a desperate maneuver to salvage his severely impacted mental health. A childhood sold for mass public consumption rarely leaves enough pieces to build a whole adult. The human brain is simply not wired to process manufactured adoration as a substitute for a genuine childhood. When an identity is entirely tethered to a studio call sheet, the eventual silence of adulthood becomes psychologically deafening. True safety requires recognizing subtle fractures before they shatter completely. Sudden loss of routine, extreme isolation, and relentless public scrutiny are not mere occupational hazards. They are profound developmental traumas. Ignoring these early warning signs rarely preserves a lucrative public image. It only guarantees a heavier, irreversible toll behind securely locked doors. But sometimes the collapse refuses to stay hidden. The next devastating fracture was broadcast live. Number 10. Gary Coleman.
Boasting a catchphrase that defined an entire decade of television, he was the undisputed king of 1980s primetime sitcoms. His magnetic, larger-than-life presence completely overshadowed his small stature, captivating global audiences and commanding a staggering episodic salary. Millions tuned in weekly to watch a beaming child star perfectly embody the American dream on meticulously lit sound stages. Behind the manufactured sitcom laughter, an unprecedented financial betrayal was silently destroying his future. Shocking court files eventually revealed a devastating truth hiding behind his protective studio bubble. The very parents and trusted advisors hired to safeguard his skyrocketing wealth had systematically siphoned his $18 million fortune down to a meager $220,000. This catastrophic financial revelation forced the former television titan into a highly publicized bankruptcy, forever shattering his Hollywood image. Stripped of his monumental wealth, his remaining years were defined by a grueling, lifelong battle with congenital kidney failure. A celebrated childhood was ruthlessly plundered by his own family, proving that ultimate betrayal often comes from those closest to the spotlight. Number 9. Demi Lovato. Armed with powerhouse vocals and undeniable magnetism, she was the ultimate triple threat of a global teen empire. Millions idolized the vibrant star who dominated sold-out arenas and massively successful musical movies. To the adoring masses, her meteoric rise epitomized the perfect pop star fantasy wrapped in a marketable message of self-acceptance. Behind platinum records and choreographed tours, the crushing weight of childhood stardom was secretly demanding an agonizing toll. The media remained oblivious as a harrowing eating disorder which quietly began at just 9 years old aggressively escalated. Saturated by unrelenting public scrutiny, her teenage years became consumed by a highly destructive cycle of fame and severe dependency. The guarded illusion violently shattered in 2018 when paramedic sirens replaced stadium ovations following a life-threatening medical emergency. Though she survived the devastating crisis, the harrowing fallout permanently rewrote her legacy from untouchable pop royalty to a gritty tale of survival. The music industry gladly profits from a soaring vocal range, completely ignoring the suffocating desperation of a child drowning in the spotlight. Number 8. Billie Piper. Bursting into the spotlight at merely 15 years old, she instantly became a highly profitable pop sensation. Dazzling promotional tours meticulously crafted a vibrant idol seemingly destined for permanent global domination. She effortlessly captured millions, basking in the deafening roar of sold-out arenas and blinding paparazzi lenses. Beneath the heavily scheduled machinery of her sudden stardom, a profound isolation was quietly taking root. Crushed by the merciless demands of constant performing and completely stripped of her autonomy, the young artist rapidly lost control over her own life. The grueling hours engineered by industry executives inevitably triggered a devastating battle with a severe eating disorder, carefully concealed behind rehearsed smiles during high-profile appearances. Behind the platinum-selling illusion, the teenage superstar was drowning in a hidden reality defined by overwhelming loneliness and absolute despair. A celebrated youth was systematically traded for staggering corporate profits, leaving her profoundly alienated from the world that worshipped her. The industry expertly manufactured a flawless commodity, completely indifferent to the invisible torment of the overworked child they created. Number 7. Alison Stoner. Flashing cameras continuously captured a kinetic prodigy who effortlessly dominated both the silver screen and chart-topping music videos. To the world, she was an untouchable powerhouse of adolescent energy, meticulously packaged as the ultimate standout for billion-dollar tween franchises. Beneath the aggressively marketed charm and synchronized routines, a terrifying reality was rapidly unfolding off-camera. Industry executives relentlessly pushed the young star through grueling, exploitative work schedules that completely obliterated her innocence. Whispers of a deeply toxic environment eventually surfaced, with devastating later accounts exposing a hidden life plagued by severe eating disorders and horrifying instances of alleged harassment within heavily guarded studio walls. The devastating physical toll of this manufactured superstardom soon manifested in alarming medical crises behind closed doors. Driven to the absolute brink by a merciless entertainment machine, the celebrated performer was silently battling terrifying cardiac arrhythmias and profound trauma before she even reached adulthood. A spectacularly choreographed youth was ruthlessly weaponized, proving that Hollywood's most vibrant illusions often conceal the industry's most insidious exploitation. Number 6. Lindsay Lohan. Freckle-faced charm and unparalleled comedic timing catapulted her to the very pinnacle of early 2000s Hollywood royalty. She was the undisputed face of a generation, seamlessly carrying massive box office hits and illuminating international red carpets with an infectious megawatt smile. The studio machine aggressively branded her as the ultimate American sweetheart, banking millions on her vibrant adolescent perfection. The suffocating weight of intense public scrutiny soon began to fracture that meticulously polished exterior. Completely unable to endure the merciless, around-the-clock paparazzi surveillance, she desperately sought refuge in a highly destructive cycle of substance dependency. Alarming tabloid headlines rapidly replaced glowing movie reviews, documenting frantic nights out and escalating erratic behavior as the once beloved star spiraled entirely out of control. Grim booking photos and stark courtroom files ultimately cemented the devastating reality of her downfall. Confirmed reports of illicit drug possession triggered a grueling series of legal interventions, forcefully derailing her once promising career and mandating multiple stints in locked rehabilitation facilities. A celebrated cinematic darling was ruthlessly devoured by the fame machine she helped build. Number 5. Corey Feldman. Anchoring legendary 1980s coming-of-age blockbusters, his energetic charisma made him a definitive cinematic icon. He was the quintessential teenage rebel, commanding massive box office returns while flashing a confident grin on countless magazine covers. To the public, he lived an enviable adolescent dream, seamlessly navigating Hollywood's most exclusive circles. Behind lucrative studio contracts, a deeply sinister reality was systematically destroying his innocence. Later testimonies exposed harrowing accounts of severe exploitation, revealing how the unprotected actor endured relentless abuse from powerful industry figures. The crushing psychological trauma of this untelevised nightmare rapidly dismantled his carefully constructed public persona. Desperately seeking an escape from profound pain, he plummeted into a highly destructive cycle of illicit substance dependency. Alarming headlines soon replaced his celebrated filmography, cementing a tragic reality born from industry negligence. The entertainment machine happily banked millions on a child's charisma, while completely ignoring the predators operating in plain sight. A heavily publicized downward spiral, culminating in court-ordered rehab, would soon prove that a modern red carpet darling was equally vulnerable to this venomous fame cycle. Number 4. Tatum O'Neal. Swept onto the cinematic stage at an astonishingly young age, her undeniable talent captivated audiences and industry elites alike. She was a prodigious force, commanding the spotlight with an effortless, precocious brilliance. To the public, she was a beloved cinematic treasure, living a highly envied, glamorous existence under the Californian sun. Far away from the flashbulbs and roaring applause, a deeply tragic reality was unfolding behind closed doors. Completely neglected by her parents, the young star was left entirely unprotected against the relentless pressures of her environment. The devastating emotional suffering resulting from this profound abandonment quickly shattered her carefully maintained public illusion. Desperately attempting to numb the relentless agony of her childhood, she plunged into a highly destructive cycle of illicit substance dependency, ultimately battling a harrowing addiction to heroin. Tabloid headlines aggressively documented a profound personal crisis as she barely survived severe, untelevised mental health emergencies during her fragile teenage years. A globally adored prodigy was ruthlessly discarded by her own caretakers, proving that Hollywood royalty often hides the most devastating neglect. Number 3. Miley Cyrus. Sporting a chart-topping dual persona, she became the undisputed crown jewel of a billion-dollar tween television empire. Flashing a brilliantly manufactured smile on countless red carpets, she dominated sold-out stadium tours before even reaching high school. To the public, she lived the ultimate pop star fantasy, effortlessly balancing relatable adolescence with untouchable musical royalty.
Beneath the vibrantly colored merchandising, a punishing corporate machine was quietly orchestrating a devastating physical toll. Starting at just 12 years old, the young powerhouse was subjected to grueling, relentless production schedules, forced to work from before dawn until deep into the night. The deafening arena applause expertly masked the severe exhaustion of a child entirely stripped of autonomy. The crushing demands of carrying a colossal franchise eventually triggered profound psychological and cognitive consequences far away from the flashing cameras. Escaping this heavily sanitized studio image required a highly scrutinized public rebellion that aggressively dismantled her manufactured innocence. A pristine, televised childhood is often built on the invisible, agonizing exploitation of the talent trapped inside it.
Number 2. Joey Lawrence. Blessed with boyish good looks and undeniable charisma, he ruled 1990s television as an instantly recognizable teen heartthrob. Flashing a confident smile on countless red carpets, he commanded massive network ratings and built a lucrative brand around a wholesome, widely beloved sitcom persona. To the roaring crowds, he was the quintessential adolescent superstar, effortlessly surfing the massive wave of primetime fame. Navigating the treacherous transition from a celebrated child prodigy to a respected adult actor soon proved to be a profoundly unsettling challenge. Beneath his meticulously maintained Hollywood swagger, crippling industry insecurities silently fractured his highly marketable public image. As lucrative leading roles rapidly vanished, the relentless entertainment machine swiftly moved on to the next generation of untarnished talent. The devastating culmination of this silent career collapse materialized in stark courtroom files when a crushing bankruptcy was officially declared in 2023. Staggering debts entirely eclipsed his once massive sitcom fortune, forcing a humiliating financial reckoning for the former television titan. A meticulously packaged television youth rarely pays the ultimate debts of adulthood.
Number 1. Sawyer Sweeten. Growing up as a beloved sitcom twin, he spent his formative years anchored inside one of television's biggest family comedies. Millions of viewers watched a cheerful boy project the picture-perfect image of a carefree childhood on meticulously lit sound stages. He was a beloved fixture of a ratings juggernaut sharing prestigious ensemble awards while completely sheltered by a highly profitable network machine. Once the iconic series wrapped, the crushing expectation to permanently maintain that manufactured, happy persona became an agonizing burden. Away from the flashing cameras, a profound disconnect from reality quietly consumed his existence. The public remained entirely unaware as an untelevised, grueling battle with severe depression silently fractured his mental stability behind securely locked doors. This heavily concealed crisis shattered his world, culminating in a devastating, irreversible loss that permanently stunned the Hollywood establishment. At the fragile age of 19, the insurmountable weight of his hidden pain ended his life in a heartbreaking private tragedy. The entertainment industry relentlessly demands a flawless illusion of joy, completely blind to the silent agony destroying the child forced to project it. The most devastating casualties in these Hollywood scandals aren't the squandered fortunes. They are the fractured minds left behind. The industry's relentless ecosystem isolates its young, demanding perfection while silencing their desperate cries for help. Here at Hollywood Stars and Scars, the record shows that true bravery isn't enduring a toxic spotlight. It is having the profound courage to walk away, prioritizing your mental survival before the machine consumes everything. When the blinding flashbulbs finally shatter and the roaring ovations fade into suffocating silence, the public easily forgets. Yet the performers remain securely locked inside a psychological vault the studios constructed.
to unseal the next decaying film reel of classified cover-ups and decode the Hollywood scandals this ruthless entertainment machine desperately attempts to bury, you must subscribe to Hollywood Stars and Scars. Do not look away when the heavy velvet curtain drops, because the most dazzling stars always forge the most permanent scars.